So this Rich Lowry thing, we got to talk about it real quick. I didn't know what the situation was until I got a video thrown into my feed by Stoff, who is one of my channel artists, who I do trust pretty well. Let's go ahead and get into who Rich Lowry is, though, real quick. And before we get into that, I do want to get into the fan art section first, and then we'll get into that. Also, apparently, I am getting a bunch of DMs over on WhatsApp, so I'm going to have to avoid those for just a second. But fan art for today is from Small Spoon Arts. I don't have much context, just wanted to draw Hole-chan, and this came of it. I appreciate that very much. I like how absolutely terrified I look as Hole-chan is just behind me, ruining my life, as she is allowed to do. That said, thank you for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get into, well, everything. So first of all, who is Rich Lowry? Well, the dude was born in Arlington, Virginia, raised by a social worker mother and an English professor father. He attended the University of Virginia and then served as the editor for a conservative magazine known as the Virginia Advocate. Eventually, he would join the National Review in about 1992 after placing second in a Young Writers Contest. He then became articles editor in 1994, and he got appointed to be the editor of the National Review in 1997 at the age of 29. He now writes a syndicated column for King Features and contributes to Politico. He's a frequent guest on major news networks. He's on NBC, ABC, and of course Fox News because he is very politically conservative, but he is mostly known for his political analysis. A couple notable opinions from him. He praised Governor Ron DeSantis during the COVID-19 pandemic on a May 2020 column, and he recently has faced controversy over some comments made, well, yesterday, in September of 2024, in an interview regarding Haitian immigrants. And that last part is what we're gonna be talking about today. So let's go ahead and take a listen to what that is. So let's go ahead and say, for instance, that you had to talk about Haitian immigrants. What word would you use to describe them? Well, immigrants, refugees, there's a lot of words you could use, but there's a particular way that he decided to go about this that I'll let you know my conclusions afterwards. I don't want to poison the well. Let's go ahead and listen to what he said real quick.
Finally, he said something to the effect of, look, if we have to create stories in order to bring attention to what's happening, the media, he admits they made it up.
Okay, so that's talking about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance admitted that he made up the eating the dogs, eating the cats, Haitian refugee stories during his time on the campaign trail. So J.D. Vance basically saying, hey, I've got to make shit up so that the media will pay attention to me, which is not a good look at all, but let's go ahead and continue.
Right, as opposed to, and if you listen to the full clip, he says, by drawing attention to what's happening on the ground, it's just, as this like line goes online, you don't hate the media enough. Go ahead.
You remember Alternative Facts with Kellyanne? They did the same thing. She wasn't saying you make up fictions and pretend they're facts. You bring other facts to bear in the debate that are being ignored. And that's what he was saying. And
okay, and that feels like bullshit to me. This defense here feels like bullshit when you say, well, I'm bringing other facts that are being ignored. Well, no, you're not bringing other facts that are being ignored. You're making shit up. This is a very bad defense of J.D. Vance. Before we go a little further, I want to go ahead and show exactly why you would have this kind of defense. The National Review may have a mostly factual reporting analysis for media bias fact check, but they are considered very, very right-wing, almost to the extreme side by media bias fact check. This of course means that he's going to be playing defense for J.D. Vance, but let's go ahead and continue.
I think it was in that interview where Dana Bash says, the police have gone through 11 months of recordings of calls, and they've only found 2 Springfield residents calling to complain about Haitian migrants taking.
So this is the part that has him in hot water. This part right here.
To complain about Haitian migrants taking geese from ponds. Only 2 calls. And I think one lesson in this whole story, people don't care about geese. People really hate geese. They all things considered, I think people would prefer Haitian migrants to come and take the geese off the golf course, right? So it's pets, it's the cats and dogs that's become the standard. Geese clearly don't matter.
All right. So again, if somebody says they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats down in Springfield, and the dogs and the cats in Springfield are not in fact being eaten, then no. That does not track. Now, obviously, I'm skipping over, for now, temporarily, the part that you all want me to focus on. I want to go ahead and start off by saying this is an incorrect way to analyze the situation. This is a very biased way to analyze the situation, trying to say well, there were 2 complaints about geese. So it's okay for JD Vance to say that the dogs and the cats are being eaten so that you can point your finger to there. No, it's if the dogs and cats aren't being eaten, saying that the dogs and cats are being eaten is a fucking lie. So when JD Vance says it and when Donald Trump say it, then it's a lie. As far as the geese part, if there's some validity to that part there specifically, then that is its own can of worms. But again, if you are saying people's dogs and cats are being eaten and they are not being eaten, then you just fucking lied. Period. Now, here's the part that you all want me to actually talk about, because I have a very left-leaning audience, and I'm sure everybody wants me to lambast him for saying the N-word. Because that's what it sounds like. It seems like he's saying it. But here's where we have to do a little bit of digging. Is there a word adjacent to migrant that could be used? Well, immigrant would be the one that would be used. Now, migrant would be a little incorrect, because that means people that are on, say, work visas. But if you're trying to use the 2 words interchangeably, like a lot of people do, then immigrant and migrant are fairly interchangeable. If you are speaking, well, let's slow it down real quick.
Recordings of calls, and they've only found 2 Springfield residents calling to complain about Haitian migrants.
All right, so there are 2 scenarios here. Scenario 1, which is probably the more likely one, in my opinion, he tried to say Haitian immigrants and migrants at the same time and fucked it up as a verbal flood. Fennec says, was this slowed down? This one is slowed down. That is the one that is more likely to me. Only because, as of right now, I have not been able to find anything that shows that Lowry has a history of this kind of racial profiling, like open use of slurs. I expect this of somebody like Trump, who is very, very used to engaging in very flippant language. Lowry, on the other hand, as an editor for the National Review, as much as I am not a fan of a very conservatively biased rag, that does not necessarily mean that that's what he's going for here. And over and above that, there are people like, say, John McWhorter, who pointed out as well, I second this, he said Haitian migrant as a slip of the tongue. Migrant carrying the Haitian's A sound into the following word. People do this in ordinary speech now and then, and no, I'm not downplaying racism. We just need to look elsewhere for it than here. I don't think that he's just using the N-word flippantly here. I think that what he's doing, and I agree with John McWhorter, who is a linguist, I agree that this is not the area to try to find the racism. Find where he's saying things like Ron DeSantis should be, applauded for his various actions. You can find some racism there, but you're not going to be able to find it in a slip of the tongue. People have slips of the tongue all the time. People will say words, sometimes not even realizing that the words have other secondary meanings that have become so esoteric and fallen out of use. Like, for instance, if I say idiot, somebody may point out to me that that was actually used as a medical diagnosis and therefore a slur against people who were more mentally challenged, or say people who were on the spectrum. And that's not how we use idiot these days. That's not how we've used idiot in a very, very long time. So I've seen this kind of like, this means this person is secretly a horrible person. This means this person is secretly bad. I don't know. And that's where I run into the issue. I don't know. And there are people who are trying to say, that, oh, this is 100% evidence that he said the N-word out in public and therefore that is horrible. If he did in fact say it, then I have egg on my face and I'm wrong. But I think the correct thing to do here is to be honest and say, I don't really know if that is what's happening here, personally. Now, Lowry did have an article himself that he wrote on this, and we're going to go through a little bit of it to see kind of how he defends himself here, as opposed to my particular opinions on this. He says, everyone in my business takes lumps for things they say. That comes with the territory. What's different is getting smeared for something you verifiably didn't say. This has been the project of malicious accounts on Twitter the last few days that have insisted that I said a racial slur during my appearance on the Megyn Kelly show last weekend. These ridiculously false accusations on social media that have been rebutted even by people who disagree with me politically have now resulted in cancellations in the real world. I was scheduled to speak at Indiana State University in a couple of weeks, but the university has scrapped my appearance in light of recent developments and following any advice of our public safety officials regarding campus and community safety concerns. Says this is a classic pretext often used by university officials to dispense with speakers they find inconvenient. They'd really love to have them, don't you know, but it will take as much security as is required for Donald Trump to play a round of golf, so sadly it just isn't possible. Now, here's the thing. This is the part that I find to be a little bullshit. If you were scheduled to speak at the university, then the university wanted you to be there. If en masse, the students at the university don't want you to be there, oftentimes the university will end up canceling on you. This happens to people like Matt Walsh. This happens to people like Ben Shapiro, because they ought not be at these fucking universities. Lowry, if you were scheduled to be there and people are going, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't be there now because you had this slip, that's one thing. It's going to die down in like 2 or 3 months. I don't like this, woe is me, I'm the victim stuff here. Because we see this from Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh. We see this from these people all the time who have the biggest platforms in the business and then also try to say, oh, I'm being canceled, I'm being silenced. Like, no. If you're not told to speak at a certain convention, that doesn't mean you're being canceled. Cancellations have to happen from within your own group, your in-group. Splinter says, see, if he was genuine, why wouldn't he just admit that he messed up, or at least he said something very close to the N-word? Why does he commit to having done nothing at all? That's the other bit of defense that's interesting to me, but let's go ahead and continue. He says, like all cancelers, the university wants you to believe this is just an exception to its scrupulous fair-mindedness. It is important to stress that the cancellation is not intended to limit our neutrality on different political viewpoints. Taking the side of woke online fringe and giving it what it wants based on the basis of almost certainly non-existent security threat doesn't speak to political neutrality. All right, so nobody's politically neutral. I think Lowry may be smart enough to understand that. At least I hope so, right? Nobody's fucking politically neutral at all. If you want to lambast him for anything, you can lambast him for this kind of language. Anybody who engages in this kind of language about, oh, the woke hate me, probably has enough going on that you can point to any of that instead of a slip of the tongue. Points out here, it pains me to say I've also been canceled by the Badger Institute, the right-of-center think tank in Wisconsin. The president called on Tuesday to ask me to withdraw from an address at an upcoming dinner, and when I refused and asked him what I'd done wrong, he only said something or other about the environment, when I flatly asked him whether he was disinviting me, and he said yes. I don't want to suggest this is anything on the order of what other people have suffered and losing their livelihoods and reputations to cancel culture. This episode is worth dwelling on, though, because the underlying phenomenon is so pernicious and stupid, and people who don't have gallons of ink to defend themselves the way I do, don't work for a conservative organization the way I do, are particularly susceptible to this kind of cut-rate McCarthyism. Bear with me for a minute as I go into a little detail. On Megan McKelly's show, I was discussing the Springfield, Ohio controversy, and in the course of saying Haitian migrants, I started to mispronounce the word migrants. I began to say it with a short I, the way you say immigrants instead of the long I that you use for migrants. I caught myself in the middle before shifting to the correct pronunciation. So I said what you might call the M word. You can try to look up the N word, but you will fail because it's not a word, let alone a racial slur. It happens to rhyme with a racial slur, but that doesn't make it one. And then he goes on and points out more shit here. I don't need to worry about everything that's in here as far as his defenses of himself, because I already kind of agree here, and we can find this part out by looking at this.
To complain.
Let's watch his mouth shape, and note, I'm going to be speaking as somebody who has taken vocal lessons and has had mouth shape drilled into me like crazy. So we're not just going to take his word, because I don't want to take his word. I don't like the guy. I don't like the way he responds to people on the left. I don't like the way he refers to us. I don't like what he writes. I don't like him. But we're going to go ahead and do our due diligence because that's the right fucking thing to do. So, it's a little blurry, but let's look at his mouth shape.
Complain about Haitian migrants.
All right. So if you look at his mouth shape, and look at mine real quick. If I say N, no, mo, no, mo. If I say an M word, I am speaking with my lips. But if I say an N word, I am speaking with my tongue. N. So, the only difference between the two mouth shapes for him is the difference between the long and the short I. I, E, I. Each of these words has a different mouth shape. The closer you get to E, the more your mouth opens. So what we would expect to see is pursed lips for an M sound, and the only real difference being how wide the mouth does or does not go. So, let's go and take a look.
Calling to complain about Haitian migrants.
If you look at his mouth shape in both of these,
Haitian migrants.
He has the exact same mouth shape both times. Both times, his mouth shape, aside from the corners where you would change long or short I's, makes the M sound. Fennec says M is a bilabial sound, and I cannot remember the term for that, but my brain keeps on going fricative, but that may be wrong. He said a slur. No, he didn't. I'm sorry. As somebody who makes leftist content online and has quite the bias against right-wing bullshitters, if I'm looking at a video as somebody who has been trained in how to shape his mouth properly from a vocal instructor, I do not see what I need to see for it to have been that sound. Because if I say the word migrant, immigrant, but I meant to say migrant, it's going to end up sounding like a racial slur. It's just going to end up sounding like that. I do not see an N versus an M. And I don't know how many times I have to say those two particular letters for you to see how mouth shape changes between the two of them. Old Gus says, I will say Japanese syllable ending N. It is said bilabially, but it is still an N sound. It is possible. You'd have to be trying really hard. You'd have to be trying really hard. Said he may be racist in general, but didn't say the N-word, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. He may or may not just be racist, but I don't think that he said the N-word here, because I'm not seeing the mouth shape thing. The thing that I would be expecting to look for, the thing that I was trained to look for in a mirror when learning how to sing. instructions that I took for over a year and a half. Axel says it might be the effect where we think we hear an N, so it's an N. And that happens a lot, too. There's plenty of ways to make that happen. If you've ever done those exercises where you listen to songs backwards, oftentimes people will hear different things when you hear those songs backwards. Typically, they'll hear whatever somebody puts in as subtitles. Sylvie says, does it matter if it was an accident or not? Like, what if he accidentally said the N-word? So if he accidentally said the N-word, then that means that this is a bit of parlance that he typically uses. We accidentally say words that we are used to using in everyday speech. This is one of the reasons why I may not judge somebody personally and call them a horrible person for using very terrible language in private with, just friends who it's not going to go out and hurt. But if you have that language slip out when you are a public speaker, that is indicative of how often you use that language in your private life. And if you use the N-word very often as a white person in your private life, that's a red flag to me that you're probably really fucking racist. Just generally speaking. That's why it matters a little bit. If he did accidentally say the word, then it's a red flag for a whole slew of issues. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and criticize him on the things that I know he said. And I know he said that lying about dogs and cats being eaten is a good thing because it points to a real issue with geese. That's what he has said here. Or at least it is a neutral thing. And I disagree that it's a neutral thing. It also doesn't help his case that all of the proliferation of the problematic language aimed at Haitians is aimed with racial bias. Remember when JD Vance went on live TV and went, "Oh, we're gonna deport them back to Haiti instead of fucking Haiti," and Trump went, "We're gonna take them back to Venezuela," as if the Haitians here are from Venezuela. Said the goose thing was a guy who worked for Parks and Rec that was cleaning up roadkill. Yeah, like even those situations, we can criticize him for that. Blaze Bunny says, I think he said it. I don't think there is enough evidence for that. I think that there's enough linguistic evidence that that is not what he said. And we can criticize him instead on the stuff that he actually 100% did say, which is 100% fucking wrong. It is not okay to effectively create a racial profile for people who are here as refugees, as migrants, as immigrants. It is not a good idea to create that profile and to enable that racism in people by proliferating a story that is bullshit about them eating people's fucking pets. That's not okay, and that is something that he did do. That is something that is super fucking wrong and stupid. And him and JD Vance and Donald Trump and all of them are absolutely horrible fucking people for it. And legal refugees at that. Well, by having refugee status, they are legal. That is what having refugee status means. That's what the TPS is for. Van Brick says, why is my message being checked by mods? That I don't know. That I do not know. At all. Splintered Orion says, in the clip, the way it came out was so close that it could be interpreted either way. That is why I care more about his reaction afterwards than the specifics of what happened. And his reaction afterwards is in line with what I would expect somebody who is on the right wing, who thinks they're getting canceled by the left-wing mob, to do. It's what they're going to do. And I don't like that kind of language being used in general when he's talking about, oh, the woke mob canceled me, so I'm not allowed to go to all of these different places that I was originally scheduled to go for. Like, I don't know what I would do in his shoes, but I also don't work for a conservative outlet, and I don't have to play defense for a vice president who lies to people and thinks that that's an okay thing to do. Said Blaze says, the end of the N-word does not match immigrants or migrants. You're right. It doesn't. It doesn't match it. But my argument never once, ever hinged on the end. It hinged on the beginning of the word, where he said the M sound and made the M shape in his mouth. You can watch the video over and over and over again if you want to see him making the M shape instead of the N shape. An N is made with the tongue and the roof of your mouth. An M shape is made by pursing your lips. In both of the words, he pursed his lips. It was an M shape, not the N word. If somebody comes out and finds out with a bunch of, like, backstage recordings that this guy flippantly uses the N-word in all of his private conversations with friends, at that point I've got information I can work from. Fennec says, I think we're getting hung up on whether or not he did a slur instead of the shitty things he actually said. Yeah, and that's a fucking problem. We as left-wing people on the internet who want to try to advocate for people being better and people doing better and, like, human rights and civil rights, we need to do and be better about focusing on the shit that actually matters. Whether or not he did the racial slur, that's the headline. That's the tabloid line. That's the fucking red blood that people eat up. That's not the part that matters. The part that matters is the bullshit he said in defense of JD Vance. That's the stuff that matters. But let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. For me, this is my opinion. Focus on the shit he said that was actually wrong, not whether or not he said the thing that would get him canceled on Twitter. Focus on when people are actually shitheads. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.